Hey everybody, hope and pray that you're doing well. Today as we come to our word from the Word. And today that word is how. How. Now, things are a little bit different today. Of course, internet out, computer, program I use for the videos runs through the internet. So, needless to say, we're just going through the phone today, so we won't have all the bells and whistles. Not that there's that many of those anyway, but just as we dive in today, with that question, how? Right? You would come to this and you would say, you imagine that the people of the Israelites and all the Jewish people and then all the other surrounding people, even the Babylonians, Chaldeans, you believe that they would probably look at this and say, how did, even though they were victorious, to look and say, how did all of this come about? And I think that even as we'll see that Jeremiah, as you read on, you'll see that Jeremiah is finally freed. And you see what some things that are going on with him, and we'll still talk about those next week. But to look today, that you wouldn't think that the enemy would probably really think that much about it. It's amazing to hear today what one of those other soldiers or captain of the guard, what he says. So today, how? Jeremiah chapter 40, looking at the first 3 verses, says, the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord after Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, had led him to go to Ramah, when he had taken him bound in chains among all who were carried away captive from Jerusalem and Judah, who were carried away captive to Babylon. And the captain of the guard took Jeremiah and said to him, the Lord your God has pronounced this doom on this place. Now the Lord has brought it, and has done just as he said, because you people have sinned against the Lord and not obeyed his voice. Therefore, this thing has come upon you. Now, many commentators will even argue, saying that there's no way that this captain of the guard, an enemy soldier, that he would have had this theology about the Lord. But it's a little bit easier to believe than you would think, because in that time, they did. A lot of times, the Babylonians, they would study other religions. You think about even today, that there are people around today that study a lot of different religions. Let's also remember what set the Israelites apart. What set them apart was the fact that they served one God. It wasn't the thousands or hundreds of thousands that many other religions did. And so they would have stood out. And the whole point is, if we really want to look at it, the whole point is that they would stand out, serving only one God. The problem is that Israel, having the one true God, chose to go after hundreds of other gods, maybe even thousands of other gods, because they wanted to follow in the footsteps of all those around them instead of being a shining light before them. So here we see that people did take notice of what the Lord was doing, not what the Lord was doing through Israel, not what the Lord was doing for Israel, but what the Lord was doing to Israel. And what was he doing? He was punishing them for their disobedience, for their unbelief, for their unfaithfulness. Now, as we take that to this side of the cross, this side of the empty grave, we know that we face persecution. We know that we face suffering. We were talking about Wednesday night, right? That we will all face suffering. But it cannot even be compared with the glory that will be revealed in us and what will be revealed to us. But here's the key, I think, for us today to take from this passage. And I pray that you take this to heart. Because there's times that suffering happens, like with Job. I always use him as an example because Job did nothing wrong, and yet he faced suffering, and he faced persecution, and he faced ridicule, and he faced a lot of other things. But it was only to strengthen his faith, and God blessed him through that process, and at the end of that process especially. So I don't want you to think that if there's something happening, that it's automatically coming against you because of sin in your life. But let's also remember that the reason persecution and suffering, or let's just say the reason that suffering exists in the first place, is because of sin and our sin nature. But having said all of that, let me say this, and this is what I want you to focus on today. As Israel was a focus because of what God had done to them instead of through them, today, are people more attentive to what God is doing to you in your life? Or are they paying more attention to what God is doing through you in your life? And let's be honest, what we normally focus on is more what God will do for us in our life. Today, how is God using you? Is God using you as an example of His judgment? Is God using you as an example of His grace? Is God using you as an example of His mercy? What is God using you for today? Do you even want to be used of God? Do you have a desire to be seen, not as a believer who has turned his back on God, like Israel was seen here in Jeremiah, but do you want to be seen as a faithful follower of Christ no matter what happens, who will maintain your faith no matter what the storm may bring? How will you be used today? God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.